Hello and welcome to Audio Documentaries with Dweezil Zappa. And we're back. How are you?
Yes, we're back, and I have no idea what this one's going to be about today, but we'll see what happens.
Well, this is going to be a big one, so it's going to be a two-parter. We're going to do Live in the Moment too.
Okay, well, that whole series of guitar stuff, that's really my version of Shut Up and Play Your Guitar.
Yeah,
And it's excerpted solos from different tours that represent different eras of my playing in the same way that my dad put those different volumes of Shut Up and Play Your Guitar together. But I always have to put the interstitial pieces to make the things connect because they're just, like I said, excerpted solos in the same way that he did that. So that's
yeah,
been the challenge with some of these, and they've been created out of the front of house recordings, which are just the stereo mix that the people in the audience would have heard that night. And that's the fastest and easiest way to put records like this together. Someday, because now the studio is up and running, I'll be able to mix things from the multi-track and create even more space and texture and stuff. And then also maybe think about doing Atmos versions of stuff like that.
so is that how'd you figure out the songs for this? Because obviously it has to have some kind of run, some continuity, and they got to fit sort of.
Yeah, that is always the challenge. I just find a collection of solos that I think represent a decent era of my experimenting and my playing, and then I just find a way to connect them. So the balancing act of which version or which song or which solo
Right.
goes with which doesn't really happen until I've found enough examples of things to work with, and then I just start kind of making a jigsaw puzzle out of them. But they need that transitional thing that will tie them together, and sometimes it's a sound effect like the things that my dad used to do where suddenly it would cut to some sped up drums or something in the piano like plucking strings, and then some weird voice saying something, like Patrick O'Hearn
Yep.
saying things at different times on the Shove and Play Guitar record. But if I recall, and I don't know exactly where these went, but the duck calls from the Roxy tour that we did, they make several appearances on this record as transitional devices.
I couldn't even think off the top of my head because I usually listen to it with my headphones on or earbuds in, so I'm not actually listening to it because everything just kind of goes together.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of you're on a journey, so I get lost in the song titles on this one myself.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I probably won't remember exactly where everything is from, but we'll just have to see what we can come up with as we discuss it.
All right, we'll start into it. So, what were the years? Was there a certain time period you did these at? Like between.
I think the oldest one may have come from 2013 or 14. So it was basically 2013 to 2020 or 2019. I can't remember when the record was actually finished. Maybe it was 2000 up to 2018. I don't know how old this record is. So,
Well, you're on top of it.
uh,
All right, we'll hop into it. So see, it starts off rocking with 555, which is a crazy guitar lick to begin with.
right. And that one is from Shut Up and Play Your Guitar. And I try to emulate the tone that my dad had, which has that Dyna-Flanger kind of slightly out of tune, doubled sound. And I try to play some of the phrases that he actually plays in that solo, the version that's on the record. Because a song like 555 only exists in that form. If he played over that same backing track on other tours, he wouldn't be playing the same notes or the same phrases or anything. So when I'm trying to recreate the feeling of a solo like that was completely improvised, my challenge is to try to learn certain things that he played and play them in a way that may be similar, but connect the dots to give the thematic element of
Okay.
the solo. So that's what you'll hear at the beginning. I start off in the same way that he started, And then there's a few other guidepost things, but it's pretty much completely improvised, other than a couple of phrases that are similar to what he played originally.
I think, well, obviously since you've been doing Frank for so long, you know the phrasing. You kind of have an idea of what was going to go on anyhow.
Well, it's hard because part of the whole process of learning my dad's music and playing it was I wanted to be able to play solos that I could improvise, but I wanted to be able to play in his style enough to keep it for the listener to feel like these sounds and this style of playing is meant to be there. It's meant to be evocative of the original, as opposed to somehow going on some jazz fusion puppet show thing. You know, I don't, you know, that's not the kind of thing that I ever wanted to bring to the table. And so it's like learning another language. I had to learn enough of his stylistic nuances so that I could play filtered through what that is, but still play as myself. So it's a very weird balance, and it's taken a very long time to be able to have enough vocabulary from what he may have done, and then be able to think in a way that allows me the freedom to play what I would play, but through that filter. So it's a challenge that over time I got a little bit better at, but to me that's always been the most difficult thing about playing my dad's music. Obviously the composed parts can be very challenging and difficult for just the reason of what the compositional elements are, but to then be able to play in context to the music in a way he might have played is a whole other level. And plus the sound design and all these other things that are required to really evoke that feeling, that is the extra layers of detail that I've always done. And it's always taken a lot of time and effort to do. And this one, I'm pretty sure was from a festival in Germany. We played the Stimmen festival, and it was the opening song from our set. And I don't remember, I mean, it was easily 5 years ago, but it was a really packed house in this building in a little small town in Germany. And that's how we started the show.
Oh, actually, it's really a good opener too. I see a lot of guitars playing online too. Like it's one of these songs to learn. I think it's so technical and it's heavy. It's a very heavy Zappa song too.
Yeah,
You know?
and the tonality of it has some interesting things that you can do with it. He took it into a couple of different places that had kind of a half hold diminished, or this melodic minor kind of thing. It's basically mostly a minor sounding modal sound, but I played with all those elements in the same way that he did, but it's how the wah kind of shapes the notes, and how you hear sometimes things a little out of tune and then they resolve themselves to being more in tune based on the shape of the wah. You know, that kind of stuff is, it's all part of what happens when you play over that. And other people that aren't that keyed into what that sound is and how to wrangle that sound, if they play over 555, I don't feel that it has the same character or texture unless you're using that Dyna-Flanger type of sound.
I feel like when I hear people do it, pretty close to it. I mean, I'm not going to put it down. It's the frantic part that pick up that da 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 da. I feel that's kind of the focus for a lot of people when they're learning it, not the subtle parts. You know.
Yeah.
If I'm correct, this actually goes into a really odd tuning transition to it's in the key of E. I think you do Muffin Man. I think it says something. This is the right one, right? It goes right into a weird lick from the Muffin Man, and then into.
I have to remember. Well, there's definitely one where we do a messed up version of Muffin Man. I think one of the transitions was there was
right. That's what I'm thinking. This is.
Yeah, we used to on stage have Sean Coey pick up a guitar and play Muffin Man because she was just learning guitar. So it was not the perfect performance, but then mixed with other things, like try to make it everybody. I don't know if this was like the super atonal version where it was like not the right notes, everybody playing different notes and but in the same rhythm of Muffin Man.
That's what it feels like. I'm thinking it's the end of this one was like just like da 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 da. It's really like a high school sound. It's really crazy. And then you go right into it. It's in the key of E. I'm pretty sure that's the one.
Yeah, if I remember that we did different versions of that Muffin Man style thing. So sometimes we would play the right notes, but just try to play it as if we didn't know how to play the song. Or sometimes we would play the right rhythms, but all the wrong notes just like blended on top of each other. So it's a cacophony of sound, but the correct rhythm. So we would do all kinds of different things. But I haven't heard the record in a while, so I don't remember exactly which version.
I want to hear that because I just know it's just so on purpose. It's such a fun little train wreck going into something else. So then it goes into it's in the key of E.
So it's in the key of E, I think, from what I remember, is like a Yo Mama style solo. So the song Yo Mama had this extended solo that when you hear the record version, you think, oh, wow, there's all this interplay between the guitar and the drums. But what my dad did, and he didn't really give too much explanation for people at the time, but he actually took a solo that was from a different song and put it on top of another song. And so when you hear it, you think it's just a solo that happened, but really they're two unrelated things that have been put together by editing and the way that he had to do it. This is before computers.
Right.
So it's 3 tape machines involved. You got one machine that has the backing track, one that has the solo, and then the third one where they both come together and create a new master. And you have to press play on the machines at the right time to make sure that they sync up to create the new master. And that was the whole thing that he called xenochrony. And you know, the machines, once you press them and they're all into record, they're going to drift. They're going to do whatever they do because they're tape machines and they're separate things. But it sounds like this interplay that's happening between the guitar and the drums. And that was one of those solos that had xenochrony. So I would learn a lot of the phrases that are in that solo because there's these transitional things that take place where the band has to know, okay, now we're moving on to the next part
of
this thematic thing. So there's enough phrases in there that will let the band know when we're moving on. But that solo itself, what I played, it has a lot of the same kind of, if you talk about it like in cooking ingredients, it has a lot of the same spices.
Right.
But then it simmers a little longer in other areas, you know. So I've got some things that I'm doing in there that are very specific to me, but then I do some things that are very much close to note for note some of the things that he actually played. So it's an odd combo, but it all feels like it's part of the same soup.
You actually ever do any solos exactly?
There are a couple that I learned note for note, like Uncle Remus. Trying to think if there were any other ones. I mean, I might have at one point learned, obviously, I do the Peaches on Regalia one, note for note.
Yeah.
But there might have been a couple, like at one point I might have learned Dirty Love to play it note for note like he did. But and the intro for Pajama People I played pretty close to what he played, but a lot of times it's just not possible to play in exactly his phrasing when there's slower elements like the Uncle Remus. That's more doable for me, or for most pretty good guitar players because it's blues based, it's pentatonic, it's something that they could learn the phrasing, and it's a hummable melody, and that helps when you're trying to memorize and learn phrases. But when it's really obtuse, abstract stuff that he does, like a solo from a song like Canarsie or something like that, that's, good luck to anyone to memorize or learn note for note, because it's just too hard.
Yeah, I can't just think of most of the songs off the top of my head. I can't just go through them like an easy one that most people do. It's really hard. Inverted commas.
Okay, inverted commas. It's one of these would be an apostrophe. So that's the name that relates it to apostrophe. That's a solo from a version of Apostrophe, and I don't remember what city this one is, but it has a real heavy fuzz face kind of sound to it, along with the Sustainiac that's in the SG. So there's some notes that just sound like they are burning the speaker cones as it's happening. And Apostrophe, a lot of times, we would play that just as a trio. So it would be me and Ryan and Kurt. And it was just a transcendent kind of thing, because we would just launch into stuff. It was one of the most fun solo sections to play on. And it's just got a heavy thing, but it's bluesy and it's kind of groovy. And so that one, I think, is a good example of my style of playing, where it's mixed with my dad's kind of phrasing and sensibilities, but the tone is a little bit heavier, and then it has a little bit more of some of my kind of phrasing with the specialized groupings of fives and sevens that are, I have them mapped out on the guitar in a way that is pretty unusual. It sounds like an explosion of notes. If you hear it, it's hard to visualize where these notes are coming out from, because the fingerings are actually simplified versus what you're hearing. It sounds like so much more is going on. Part of the way that I play those groupings of sevens and fives, they're little chord shapes. So my fingers are doing less and the pick is doing more. And so it sounds like a lot more is going on when you hear it. It just sounds like this cascade or waterfall of notes that intervallically jump out in weird ways. And that's something that I've developed in my playing over the past maybe 10 years. But this particular solo has a lot of that kind of stuff in it.
Do you repeat your own solos of that, of your when you improvise over your dad's stuff?
Well, I have certain things that I would just sort of call, strategery. It's like I would have certain things that I know I can have at certain times, different tools or different kinds of concepts that I can employ for these different sections. So some of the way I might get in and out of things may be similar, because it's a familiar thing that I can do. It's just like it's
transitions,
not
like some kind of emergency transitions.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you want to be able to envision, like, okay, you have this much space. How are you going to get from here to here? And then if you said, okay, I wanted to play a string of fives and sevens, what's the best, easiest way? What are 3 ways I could do that? And then how could I mix and match those so I get from here to here? And it's just the combinations of those that flip-flop around. But it's part of, a set of tools that you can use. And it's not going to be exactly the same every time, because I'm not playing a composed lick, but I'm using the same principles. It's part of the same strategy to get from one place to another. And that's kind of what my solo style has developed into over a period of time is, if I know that I have a certain amount of space, I want to know that I have 3 or 4 options. And because playing guitar is so much pattern based stuff and your hand will just kind of go where it comfortably knows, I don't want to every night just allow that to happen. I want to be able to go, okay, I'm comfortable, but now I purposely want to do a shape shift and I want to be, you know, coming from a different place. And that is the mental side of it. Is I don't want to hear myself repeat too many things. And it's hard to get yourself out of that when something is a comfortable strategy. So you have to be able to go, okay, instead of going up, I want to descend, or I want to just flip those, you know, back and forth. And that's how it starts to have these other textures or contours in the solo. And at the end of the day, if you're improvising music, that's what you need. Is you need to have contrast. You need to have different contours so that you may be able to repeat a rhythm, but the notes need to change enough so that there's all this contrast.
The reward is probably huge by being able to be spontaneous live doing it, but then the danger of that tightrope is going the wrong way too.
That's the thing, is that, you know, some nights you're going to be really feeling good and other nights maybe not so much. But you want to be able to have enough vocabulary that even if you weren't feeling like you were where you wanted to be in this little 10-second portion, maybe this 10-second portion, you step on the gas and something feels good and you're like, okay, now I'm in it. But it's a mental side where you can't allow yourself to just think, oh, this is not happening, because then you're basically saying to the audience that you're not in it. So you want to be able to try to make sure that you can stay there. And even if certain parts aren't exactly what you want it to do, if you're improvising, you might hit on something that you can all just lock into, and it suddenly becomes this amazing thing that you never even knew was possible. And there's a lot of examples on this record where we just kind of lock into certain things at certain periods of time that could never be done again. You couldn't even write it to be everybody playing the same way that's happening there. And that's what my dad loved, was to have those kind of moments. And if we play 100 shows a year, there's a good chance that you're going to have some exciting moments in each of these solos. The whole solo all the way top to bottom might not be the best, but you might have a great section. And so sometimes in these solos, you'll just hear only the section I like the best. You won't hear the whole solo. And that was the same for my dad's Shove and Play Your Guitar series.
So when you're actually playing, you're live in the moment. When you're actually in the moment, because you wear a lot of hats in the band, business hats, band leader, the songwriter. But at that point, you probably got to be so much into what you're playing. You're just the guitar player. Like at that point, you probably have everything pushed out of your mind, right? Except for just the music.
The best playing that I will end up doing is when I'm thinking the least.
Right.
You have too much of a thought process, then you're focusing maybe too much on technique or focusing on one certain element.
Mm-hmm.
What I like to do, we all used in-ear monitors. I like to have myself a little bit below everybody else so that I force myself to listen more to what's going on. And I even had a note on my pedal board that just was a big piece of tape that said, listen. And that whole concept, I have a friend named Tim Miller, who's an incredible guitar player, teacher. And he told me that he had that on his pedal board. And I'm like, I got to do that, because believe it or not, one of the hardest things to do is make yourself constantly listen. If you get in your own world and you listen to only what you're doing, then you're not playing with everyone. And so the weird part about the in-ear monitors is that you can listen to somebody else's mix if you want. Like Chris Norton, the keyboard player, only had himself and a little bit of drums. He didn't have anybody else in there. He did every show with just his keyboards, his vocals, and the drums. So he wasn't listening to anyone, you know? And so that's a weird world. Like, I don't understand that at all. But but other people, they will have themselves really high in their mix because that's what they need to make them do what they need to do. But I like to hear it as a fully mixed, like as if I'm listening to the album. I want to hear every single part, and I want to hear me just enough, but I want to be able to hear other things. So if Ryan played a drum fill or Kurt played a bass fill, I could go, oh, wait, I just heard that go by. Now what happens if I try to play that as an answer? So now it's a conversation. And that's what my dad was so brilliant at in his improvisation, is that he could hear something rhythmically and then he could immediately go to recreate that rhythm and put whatever notes he wanted to it. And so there was all these little things that would happen that way. And the rhythm was so intense. There was a lot of stuff going on. So most people would be like, I have no idea what's happening here, but it's a complex environment. And so that's kind of what I try to get to, but it takes a long time to be able to train yourself to listen that way and react to what you're hearing. When I'm more reacting to what I'm hearing, I play what ends up being more interesting music if I listen back to it. If I'm sort of driving the bus and it's just me really only hearing me, I might play just whatever is the easiest thing that is comfortable or familiar. But I want to be able to challenge to hear something and go, oh, let me try to pick that up. And that's what these records are intended to be, is finding those moments where I feel like I accomplished that to some degree.
Oh, I tend to agree with the thinking less thing too. That's my motto. You think, you stink. You gotta kind of.
It's tough though, because unless you play a lot with a certain group of musicians, you really only focus on what you're doing. And it takes time to develop those relationships and understanding the vocabulary of what happens when people play together. So if you play with a certain group of people all the time, there's going to be a comfort level, and the stuff kind of like fits together better because you can anticipate how people will do things. That's why Edward Van Halen sounds amazing playing with Alex Van Halen, because they are locked and they've been playing together their whole lives. And as great as he is, if he plays with another drummer, he doesn't sound as much like Edward Van Halen when he plays with another drummer. He sounds exactly like Van Halen when he plays with Alex.
Right. Well, the road less traveled.
So that one, I feel like from memory, that's probably an Inca Roads solo. The road being in the title is a derivative message. So I think anytime I'm playing a version of Inca Roads, and that one I think is also from that same Stimmen festival. So anytime I'm playing Inca Roads, I usually try to start off with a phrase that's similar to the opening phrase that is on the most well-known version of Inca Roads. But my dad loved to play over that little chord progression, and it's just C and D. So it's major, but you can play A minor pentatonic over it. You can play D major over it. You can play combinations of things. And the structure of it is so wide open that it can go anywhere. And it often builds to a very nice crescendo because there's a phrase that he ends the solo with that everybody sings. And then it goes back into the song. And just Inca Roads on its own, that's probably the hardest song overall. Just if you think of just regular songs with vocals in my dad's music, got to be the hardest one to execute and play exactly right. So anytime you're playing that song, anything can go wrong. It's a tightrope. So it's a really difficult song to play. But the solo section, every time you play it, becomes a new thing. And that's what I love about just the concept of the arrangement of that song. It has structured elements, and then it's got a wide open solo section for guitar and a wide open solo section for keyboards. So anytime that song is played, you could play it every night and it would always be different because the improv is going to be different. And that's the coolest thing when you think about a legacy of music, where instead of playing the song the same way with the same composed guitar solo every night, where you now have 1,000 or 1,500 versions of the exact same song, this way you have 1,500 versions and it's always different, even though it's got a part at the beginning that's supposed to be played a certain way and a part at the end that's supposed to be played a certain way. All this stuff kind of in the middle changes every time. And I love that as a concept because that's how a lot of my dad's music is built. So you can have all these different listening experiences to the same song or with the same song.
Yeah, it's gotta be quite a challenge though to keep doing that every night and not feel like you're repeating yourself or.
It is. The other thing about it too is that, and this is a strange thing for musicians to be in a headspace. You might, while you're doing something, think, oh, I played that pretty good. I'm going to listen to that later and think, yeah, that's great. And then there might be a time when something goes by and you're like, oh man, I don't know what happened there. That's probably going to be terrible later. And then when you listen to it, it's the opposite. The one you thought was great, it's like, it doesn't have any vibe or finesse. It's like maybe a little mechanical. And the one you thought, oh, I don't know what happened there, is really interesting. So sometimes in the moment, you're not capable of functioning as a listening judge. So you function in terms of technical execution more, but when it comes to like just having an open mind to listen to something, almost 100% of the time when something happens that I feel like, I don't know if I was into that, later on, it's so much better than something where it's like, oh, I got to check out this ripping guitar lick. It's like, yeah, it's a ripping guitar lick, but it's not music, you know?
I think by you doing it this way, you really are honoring the music because that's the way your dad did it. I mean, it's, you improvise, you play off of it. So kind of keeping to what it was, by doing that.
And it really is a very difficult thing to do because, like I said, it takes a long time to develop a relationship working with musicians, playing with people that you feel like you could spontaneously build this thing. And then also having the vocabulary to play in context to the music. I try to make it feel like this is something my dad might have played. And then you can also sense my own personality in there as well. I don't want it to take too much of a left turn. And sometimes it'll get more rock. I definitely have a more rock background than he did, but he could rip it up too. I mean, he could play some blistering pentatonic stuff but he had the mind of a composer, and he knew all of the different modal things that he could do to superimpose different things. He had the ability as a drummer and as a composer to have this idea of different rhythms and where to place them and have all of this stuff. That's a background I don't have. I just kind of emulate what I hear and I learn and I figure out, what becomes reproducible within my sense of the vocabulary. But he for sure had a much deeper knowledge of rhythm, music theory, all these things. I just took the colors that I could focus on enough to be able to use when necessary.
You think, actually, it's a two-part. Do you notice like fan favorites that people really like, whether it be like in the US, they like this more, or the solos or the songs, or in Europe, do you find there's people that your crowd leans? Because the good thing about this audience is just like me and everyone else, we see you a lot. So it makes it way more fun that you do different stuff.
Yeah, I feel like everybody is open to just hearing whatever is possible for us to play. It's not about trying to do a greatest hits review. We really have never taken that approach. So I think people are excited when we sometimes play some really deep cuts.
I love it. I'm like, what is that? I don't even know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff is exciting to be able to do, to present something that maybe my dad only played once, or just these random things. So that, I think an audience that knows my dad's music is open to hearing a wide range of it. But as a concert goer, if you're having new people come to hear music for the first time, maybe they're only familiar with hearing a couple of songs like Don't Eat the Yellow Snow or Cosmic Debris. So you got to throw in some songs that people feel like, well, I paid money to come see this, I should hear a few things I know, rather than it being just completely brand new. But we have done tours where we've just said, all right, we're just going to play deep cuts, and that's been really fun to do it, because then it's just music for the sake of music. These are not hit songs.
Which is like, I think, like, when you come around and just buy tickets, it doesn't matter what you're playing. You just know it's going to be a show. Everyone kind of knows.
I mean, that was the thing with my dad's concerts. He, at certain times, the band would know a lot of material. I think in 1988, they knew about 300, maybe a little more than 300 songs. So he would go ahead and change the set list all the time. But people don't realize how difficult that is. And even for us, when we would learn, let's say 40 songs for a tour and then mix and match from those 40 songs, we have 2.5 hours of music that we can play. And those 40 songs may change all over. But to do that with all the amount of programming of the sounds and having access to the sounds when you need them, that's a lot of extra work that people don't realize. So you make a set list and you program all the sounds like on the guitar pedal board. So I might end up with one song might have 5 sounds in it, and then the next song might have 2 sounds in it. Next song might have 1 sound in it, and then the next one might have 7 sounds in it. And so as you are building these things, it becomes banks of sounds, and you have to keep track of where those are located as the music is going. And then if you change the set list, now you have to do all the work to now put the things in the right order. And you don't want to be like having to think about, oh, I got to go bank up, step on preset 1, then bank down. You can't think of all that stuff when you're playing all this hard stuff. So it requires making a sequential thing, like, okay, I've got 5 presets here, and then I'm going to go to the next bank because the next songs start here. I've got these, and it's just like sequences, bank up. And I might get through 8 or 9 banks in a concert, and so but then if you change the set list, you have to reprogram all that stuff. So it's, there's just a lot of work. It's not, people say, oh, well, you don't have all these lights and you're not running around. It's like, we can't. We need to see what we're doing. And we, like, we're playing hard stuff.
There's a lot of you on stage too. It could be dangerous.
Yeah.
Flax-tention is acoustic demo.
Yeah, so I was in Holland, and there's a guy named Kloet who has a radio show, and he's always been a big supporter of my dad's music, and I've done some things with him. He was the one who helped put together the orchestral concert that I did a few years ago. Yeah. And it was probably around 1988. My dad was on tour. I was at a bunch of the shows in Europe, but when we were in Holland, I think it was around that time is when there just happened to be a radio station booth open, and I had an acoustic guitar, and Ko said, well, why don't you play something? So I played that intro, which was this 2-hand tapping thing that I was working on. And the name Flax-tention is because I have a song called Flack on Confessions, and it has this open E tuning, and it's a tapping intro. And I just sort of extrapolated on that theme and added more to it. But this was done on an acoustic guitar, so it's much harder to get all that stuff to, you're really having to slap down onto the strings with both hands to do things. But that's what that was, and it came from that little radio performance.
Which is also a little treat because you don't usually do acoustic, which you've spoken about in other shows. You just don't. So it's kind of funny to see you actually have one on here. Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty rare that I have a lot of acoustic stuff. I think the most acoustic stuff I have is on Go With What You Know.
Yeah, no, I don't see any Campfire with Dweezil albums coming out there.
No.
Okay, number 7 is Filthy Habits.
Yeah, so that one I think was, if I recall, there was a place that we've played a lot, and it's just outside of DC. It's like a supper club type of place where people can eat dinner, and they're really close to the stage. So it's like you could walk off the stage and be on somebody's dinner table. And I'm right now spacing on the name of this venue, but it's a fun place to play because it's you're so close to the audience that it's like, I don't know, it's more than just a concert thing. It feels like you're almost in a theatrical play environment or something, like you're putting on some weird
Near theater.
Yeah, so it's interesting to play for a crowd that is that close to the audience, but they're sitting and they're just like, somebody is not more than 3 feet away from you in the front row, sitting there and like occasionally taking a bite of food.
That'd be kind of funny, actually. I've seen places like that, but I never imagined what it'd be like to sit there and do that. To be eating while you're.
Yeah, I mean, they typically try to get them to eat before the show starts, but sometimes people are still eating. But that version of Filthy Habits, I think that was from around 2015. That might have been from when we did the Roxy and Elsewhere tour, I think. I can't remember exactly, but that was a particularly good version, I thought, where we learned the version that my dad played with the band he took to Australia. So there was the FZ Oz record, and it was a really stripped down version of the band. And it had saxophone from Napoleon on that version, because the original doesn't have saxophone on it. But this was a cool way to bring about that FC Oz live version.
One of my favorite things is obviously the titles of these songs are always fun, So here's a good example: is Tom's Banana Experiment.
Okay, Tom's Banana Experiment. When we played at Zappa, whenever that was, a couple years back, like 5 years ago or something, a very good friend of ours named Tom, he was backstage, and he ate, I think it was a piece of fish, and it had bones that got stuck in his throat. And he was struggling to get the bones because they kind of just got lodged in his throat. And so we're like, what can we do? How can we, like help him, because he's struggling? And we're like trying to figure out a way. And we said, let's give him a banana and see if he can shove that down there and see if he can dislodge these bones. And so he basically, tried to gag himself on a banana and get the bones to stick in the banana, and it worked. So he got these bones out of his throat because it was really fine little fish bones that somehow got stuck, and he was just, struggling to breathe properly, and he kept trying to drink water and nothing was working. So Tom's Banana Experiment worked.
My God, actually sounds like a cartoon.
Yeah. Yeah, but it worked. So, but the solo, trying to think it's a really kind of like a clean and dirty Strat sound. It's like a Joe's Garage era thing. And I feel like it was possibly from Fembot. I just don't remember because I haven't heard the record in a while. So do you remember if it sounds like Fembot or because I know there's a Fembot version of something on the record, and there's also one that's from Illinois Enema Bandit, but I think that has a different name.
Yeah, I'm not sure myself on that one.
Yeah.
So, German Vacation.
That one comes from the so on the Burnt Weenie Sandwich album, there's a song called Holiday in Berlin. And there's two versions. There's the one Holiday in Berlin and Holiday in Berlin Full Blown, which has this hilarious bit of melodic playing on there, but it's like it's intended to sound a little bit wrong, like a little bit out of tune, a little bit weird. And if you thought about having a holiday in Berlin anytime between, you know, the 1930s and the 1970s, you're gonna think about how odd that could possibly be. And so this was called German Vacation because we were playing on the solo section of Holiday in Berlin.
I didn't know if it's also partly because you were one of your German performances too. Little nod
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, I think that one though came from this little club in Vienna, and it was about 1,000 degrees on stage. I remember everybody was sweating, and it was it had some kind of I think the place was called Porgy and Bess, and you can fit like 1,000 people in there or something, maybe 800 people, but the
Nice.
air conditioning just wasn't on, and it was horribly hot on stage.
Awesome. So we are at number 10. So we're going to do this show. We're going to split in half. So this will
Okay.
be our last one on this version of this one. So it's Take a Left to Peru.
So that one is another Inca Roads solo. And I don't remember where that solo came from. I feel like it was probably from memory. It might have been from Florida because I'm pretty sure that version is from Florida. But the Inca Roads solo, you'll see it has a very similar starting to the other Inca Roads solo that's on the record, but it goes in different places. And there's always kind of a moment where I might have one or two, or sometimes even three different tones that I'll use, and they build in stages. So by the time it gets to the fuzz tone sound, now everything lifts up and it's like, okay, now we're gonna go, you know, full bore and let's see what happens here. So this one I think is one of those where you can hear me step on the fuzz and it's like, okay, now everything lifts up. And that is kind of one of the things that's really fun about playing with the band is that there's these characteristic things that will happen when certain sounds enter the picture. Like everybody just knows that, okay, it's go time, you know. There might be like really experimental stuff with a bunch of delays or other things happening for a little while, see what it goes on. But then when this fuzz face sound happens, it's like, all right, it's time to rock. Yeah.
So when you put this whole thing together, did you, because you record all your shows, right? Pretty much all of them, you always have the tapes. You go back and listen to them a lot. Are you just notating it? I mean, you clearly had to go through a lot of shows to pick each pieces. Are we like so close to each solo? That's a lot to go through.
Yeah, it's difficult to go through. And then the thing is, you have to find certain mixes that sound good enough to be able to be used for this, because not every single mix turns out the way you want with a good enough balance of everything. Because it's when he's doing the front of house mixes, he's mixing for the deficiencies in the room. And so sometimes, you know, if something's too loud on stage, you might have less of it in the mix. But once Iran became the front of house engineer, we devised a way to have a pretty consistent mix because he was able to have this matrix that allowed him to have a mix that stayed pretty close to what we would want at the end of the day, where he didn't have to change those levels, but he could still mix for the house and be able to change the levels. So he was able to figure out a way to have what he needed to work on immediately, but then matrix it over here and leave it static for a good mix without affecting, this doesn't affect this. So it was a very clever way that we're able to do it with the use of waves technology. And so a lot of those, by the time we started doing it that way, then I had very consistent mixes from night to night. And Eran Ben-Zur did a great job to create those nightly front of house mixes that sound like a record.
Yeah. I don't think you realize how important a good mix man is. You know, it can really affect the band a lot.
Well, it can affect the listening experience for the audience members. And obviously, not every venue is going to be ideal for the way the PA works or the sound environment in the building itself. You know, sometimes people think, oh, you're playing in a classical concert hall, it's going to sound amazing. Well, not really. It might sound terrible with a rock band in there because it's not made to have loud sounds like that from a rock band in there. It might have too much reverb and other things. So typically a lot of the club shows end up sounding better, and outdoor shows sound the best because the sound doesn't have to reflect off of a bunch of things and cause problems. It just goes out there, and it's if you're using the PA properly, it can be very, very good. You know, it can be clear and have good imaging. So that tends to end up being really good when you have outdoor shows.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. We're halfway through this, so we're gonna say goodbye for this week, and then we'll come back again.
All right. We'll see if I can remember anything about the next group of songs.
All right. We'll be back again soon.
All right, thanks.